Hey up, it's the old Yorkshire geek here, back with some more geeky news. We've got some sad news to start with. It's been suspected for a while. Nobody's died or anything like that. Well, I presume somebody has somewhere, but this news isn't about that, so I'll make myself small. We'll get on with it. Oh, by the way, while I'm here, my Moon Knight review of episode 1 has gone up on the channel, so if you want to look at that, you can. So there you go. Just thought I'd mention that. Right, here we go. There we go. See that sad news. Bruce Willis stepping away from acting following aphasia diagnosis. This had been suspected for some time. Some people were, saying he'd like dementia and stuff like that. But it's aphasia. Bruce Willis's family has announced that the actor is stepping away from acting following an aphasia diagnosis. Aphasia is a condition that can affect someone's ability to speak, write and understand both written and verbal language. A statement from the family reads, "To Bruce's amazing supporters, as a family we wanted to share that our beloved Bruce has been experiencing some health issues and has recently been diagnosed with aphasia, which is impacting his cognitive abilities. As a result of this, and with much consideration, Bruce is stepping away from the career that has meant so much to him. This is a real challenging time for our family, and we are so appreciative of your continued love, compassion and support. We are moving through this as a strong family unit, and we want to bring his fans in because we know how much he means to you as you do to him. As Bruce Willis always says, live it up, and together we plan to do just that. Love, Emma, Demi, Rumour Scout, Tallulah, Mabel and Evelyn." The Hollywood legend has had one hell of a career, making his feature film debut in a poorly reviewed but commercially successful romantic comedy before being catapulted into stardom after playing Detective John McClane in 1988 blockbuster Die Hard. Willis even released his own pop blues album around the same time, releasing a chart-topping cover of Respect Yourself featuring the Pointer Sisters. Did he do another one as well? I can't remember. Willis would go on to play troubled child psychologist Malcolm Crowe in M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense, an aging boxer on the run in Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, and a former Special Forces major in Luc Besson's sci-fi action film The Fifth Element. Decades of exceptional work in the industry earned him a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2006, and the 67-year-old actor has continuously put out multiple films nearly every year since. Willis continued to work right up until his diagnosis, starring in a total of 8 movies in 2021, with 5 set to be released in 2022. Our thoughts are with Willis and his family. Yeah, like I say, he's been doing a lot of films recently, and that led to some suspicion that there was something wrong. And then I think Red Letter Media did a video about how he's got all these low-budget films where he just has walk-on parts, says a few yes, he just says yeah a lot, and that's it. And some people were suspecting that he had some medical condition, and he was getting as much work in as he could, as quickly as he could, before he couldn't work anymore. And maybe that's what's happened. And now he can't work anymore. So it is sad. It is sad because he's a superstar. And we haven't got many superstars, Hollywood superstars left these days, and he's one that can genuinely be called a Hollywood superstar. So that's very sad. Right. So best of luck anyway, Bruce. Hope you stick around for a lot longer, and hope your family looks after you in the future, and you enjoy your retirement, and you've done your bit to entertain the world. So now you can relax. Right, Game of Thrones. By the way, these are 2 breaking news stories. I didn't include them in my original upload, whatever. When I did my YouTube, what they call it, scheduled my stream. So I've had to add them at the last minute. And as usual, all the links are in the description box below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. That way. Like and subscribe. And use the notification bell. And drop a comment and all that stuff. You know what to do. You know the score. Right, Game of Thrones prequel series House of the Dragon to debut in August. Now this is a weird one for me, but maybe it explains it in this. The Targaryens are returning to HBO. House of the Dragon, HBO's first spin-off series of its record-breaking juggernaut Game of Thrones, will premiere on August 21st. Got to remember that date. The network announced Wednesday. HBO also revealed a new poster for the series and additional images from the show, which you can view below. Oh, I'm sorry, Gordon. Oh, I've had a busy day today. I have. Oh, cracker. Did me Moon Knight review, and then had to do editing for that. And then had to run out and get my son's laptop. His laptop's been in the menders. And that was finished today, so I had to go out and get that, and running about, and the traffic were terrible, and so I'm blaming that on yawning, or I could just be bone idle. Where were we? Right, set 2 centuries before the events of Game of Thrones, the 10-episode prequel series will depict how the House of Targaryen fell into a bitter and brutal civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons, presaging the beginning of the end of the ruling family of Westeros. The series was created by author George R.R. Martin and Ryan J. Condal Colony, based on Martin's novel Fire and Blood. Condal and director Miguel Sapochnik are executive producers and co-showrunners on the series. Martin and Vince Gerardis are executive producing as well. Much like the original series, House of the Dragon boasts a sprawling cast with a smaller core set of characters, including Paddy Considine as King Viserys I, Emmy Darcy as Princess Rhaenyra. Oh, God Almighty! Viserys' first child and his heir apparent. Matt Smith as Prince Daemon, Viserys' younger brother. Rhys Ifans as Sir Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King. That's a proper Game of Thrones name, isn't it? Otto Hightower. Olivia Cook as Lady Alicent Hightower, Otto's daughter, and Fabian Frankel as Sir Criston Cole, a knight with eyes for that. We'll have to wait and hear it said, won't we? Oops, press it wrong button. Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra. Oh, God Almighty. They'll have to shorten it, won't they, to something like Rennie or something like they did with Daenerys. They called her Dany, didn't they? Anyway, the show will also co-star Steve Toussaint, Eve Best, Sonoya Mizuno, Ryan Kaur, Jefferson Hall, David Horowitz, Graham McTavish. Oh, that name rings a bell. Where have I seen that name? Don't know. Matthew Needham, Bill Patterson, and Gavin Spokes. The premiere date means House of the Dragon has a bit of a head start, there we go, on the year's other massive fantasy series that serves as a prequel to a widely popular and acclaimed original adaptation, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Amazon Prime Video announced in August 2021 that The Rings of Power will debut on the streamer on September 2nd. There we go. So what's September 2nd? I forgot what it said now, what it was. August 21st, so it's like 12 days or whatever, isn't it? Where are we? There. 12 days head start. Will they impact each other? It's a head-to-head in the fantasy stakes between HBO and Amazon. Who's going to win? I think HBO will win. In February, Martin announced on his personal blog that shooting on Season 1 of House of the Dragon had wrapped. I have seen rough cuts of a few of them, and I'm loving them, Martin wrote. Of course, a lot more work needs to be done. Special effects, colour timing, score, all the post-production work, but the writing, the directing, the acting all look terrific. I hope you will like them as much as I do. Well, maybe you should get back, now you've done that, you can get back to writing your books, can't you? Your Song of Ice and Fire, Fire and Ice, whatever the hell they call it. That winter one, Winds of Winter, whatever the hell it's called. Just get it done, you silly old sod. The same month, HBO and hbo.max chief Casey Bloys told Variety that it's probably a pretty good bet that the network will order a second season of the show. Generally speaking, we usually let something air and see how it does, but obviously we'll make preparations ahead of time. To make sure we're ahead of the game, he said. And here's some pictures of yawning again. Oh, God, I can't help myself. That's Fabian Frankel as Sir Kristen Cole. And look at dashing knight. That's Matt Smith, obviously, as Prince Daemon Targaryen. Sonoya Mitsuno as Mysaria. She looks a bit enigmatic, doesn't she? Mysterious, just to me, anyway. Emma, I'm getting, I can't remember her name. Her that used to wear red, you know, the witch sort of woman. Bit like that. Is she going to be, I don't know. Emma Darcy as Princess Ryan. That says Rhaenyra. Right, how's it? Rhaenyra. Rani, who's going to call her. Targaryen. Millie Alcock as young Rhaenyra. And Emily Carey as young Alicent. Olivia Cook as Alicent Hightower. She's got a very, what they call her? From The Witcher. You know what I mean. From The Witcher. Paddy Considine as King Viserys Targaryen. And Rhys Ifans, was it Ifans, whatever, it's Otto Hightower. There we go. Steve Toussaint as Lord Corlys Velaryon. Somebody was saying there were going to be a black Velaryon. How does that work? Don't know. Has he dyed his hair? Don't know. Bleached it. I don't know. We haven't to think about these things. We haven't to think about, biology and genetics. It's not allowed. It's fantasy. Right, so there you go. So Game of Thrones is going to be up against Lord of the Rings, head to head, big punch out, HBO versus Amazon Prime Video, or like, you shall not pass, with the big dragon breathing fire on, not Gandalf. Maybe it is, don't know. Yeah, so we'll see what happens, We'll see what happens. That is, as I said, that is my mantra. We'll see what happens. Right. Speaking of HBO Max, welcome to Derry. It prequel, not IT, not information technology. It prequel series reportedly in development at HBO Max, and there's scary Pennywise. Ooh, heck. After two movies that collectively pulled in over $1 billion, $1 billion at the box office, it looks like Pennywise is headed back to the small screen with a brand new prequel series project. Over on The Ankler, never heard of it, today, entertainment reporter Jeff Snyder breaks the massive news that a series tentatively titled Welcome to Derry is in development at HBO Max. Snyder notes the series would likely explore the origin story of Pennywise the Clown. I thought they were doing a film. Anyway, whatever. As well as the dawn of the 27-year curse that haunts the small Maine town. Yeah, I could have sworn they said they were going to do a film. Maybe it says it further down. The report goes on to state that while the project hasn't been officially greenlit, Snyder's sources are telling him that a writer's room is being/has been convened for the project. Variety adds some info of their own. There's a link there. Head over to The Ankler to learn more. And there's a link there. The series will begin in the 1960s, in the time leading up to the events of It Part 1, the 2017 film based on the Stephen King horror novel. The story is also said to include the origin story of Pennywise the Clown. So it's going back to the dawn of the universe, is it? Variety also notes that Andy Muschietti and Barbara Muschietti are back on board to produce the series. I bet it don't go back to the dawn of the universe. I might mention it, but I bet we just see his origin story as the clown, because I think that'll be a later manifestation. Because he can appear as whatever he wants, can't he? Published in 1986, Stephen King's massive novel was, of course, first turned into a miniseries in 1990, with the great Tim Curry playing the role later played by Bill Skarsgård, who did very good, in the movies. The tale centres on the town of Derry, Maine, where a group of friends called the Losers Club battle Pennywise, the killer clown, first as kids and then 27 years later as adults. Welcome to Derry would be the first time any adaptation has expanded beyond the confines of King's classic novel, which is pretty exciting for fans of the terror tale. And then we'll stay tuned, blah, 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 blah. And there's another picture of Pennywise. And that's your lot. Yeah, so don't mention that. That's it. I could have swore that they were going to... Oh, don't show, that's too scary. Might be children watching. I thought they were going to do a film, a prequel film about it. I'm sure I've read that somewhere in the last couple of years. Maybe because of COVID, maybe it all got, put to one side and they decided to do a series instead. So anyway, as I say, we'll have to wait and see. It's just in development, so hopefully it'll come along and it'll be good, I hope. Because I liked the 1990 one. I've read the book. The book was alright. I'm not a huge Stephen King fan. I find he tends to do a lot of unnecessary background for characters. I mean, you find that some minor character, it goes into like pages and pages of his personal life, and he's got no bearing on the story. He does it a lot. But people like it, he's a multi-gazillionaire author, and I'm not. Right, Mandalorian receives a promising Season 3 update. Crew members for the Mandalorian Season 3 are finishing up their time on set, indicating that overall production may wrap soon. And there he is, flying through the air with Grogu. Little sod. Certain crew members for the Mandalorian Season 3 have completed their time on set, indicating that overall production on the Star Wars drama may be coming to a close. According to the Bespin Bulletin, costume designer Amanda Ramirez posted a collection of photos on Instagram, including a Season 3 patch to celebrate wrapping production on the film. That's a wrap. Here we go, from a galaxy far, far away. I'm supposed to be doing shots out whenever I read that. I ain't got any. Well, I have, but I forgot. She wrote, "Thanks for having me this season. Remember for next time, I'll get a little bottle of whiskey out and stuff, and I'll do shots every time we see a galaxy far, far away. Thanks for having me this season. It was an absolute adventure. Can't wait for the next one. It is unclear if only the costume department has completed their work or if filming for Season 3 as a whole has wrapped. Ramirez has since deleted her post and made her account private." So she obviously got in trouble, didn't she? Old Disney probably shook the fist at her. Slapped her down. Disney was being Will Smith and she was being Chris Rock. Production on the third season of Mando and Baby Yoda's Adventures began in fall 2021 and was expected to finish up in spring 2022, according to initial reports. The most recent update came from the series star Carl Weathers, pardon me, we're having that drink, who in January said that Season 3 shooting was still underway. If everything stays on schedule, the new season is expected to premiere on Disney Plus. Oh, crikey. Sorry. On Disney Plus around Christmas 2022. This would match the House of Mouse's scheduling of The Mandalorian's previous seasons, which both aired toward the end of their respective calendar years. The Book of Boba Fett, which has been dubbed The Mandalorian Season 2.5 by some, also premiered at the tail end of 2021. Plot details regarding Season 3 are scarce, or is it scarce? Whatever. Although recent leaks hint that the series will be delving into the history and lore of the Mandalorians and their home planet Mandalore. The new season will also see the return of Simon Cassianides' Axe Woves, who was missing from the Season 2 finale, curiously. Because they wanted it to be all the girls, didn't it? They did. But, Luke Skywalker appearing made everybody forget about that bit. The debut of Back to the Future's Christopher Lloyd as an unknown character. Before Mando and Baby Yoda grace our screens again, though, Star Wars fans will return to Tatooine for Obi-Wan Kenobi, which will follow the titular Jedi as he is hunted by Inquisitors and haunted by the failures of the Jedi Order during the Clone Wars. Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen will reprise their roles as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader, respectively. Now, I've heard, actually today, that it's going to be somebody else. When you don't see Hayden Christensen's face, it's going to be somebody else in the under the mask. That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard. I saw a post from a convention, and one of the guests was the person who is under the mask in Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I don't think it's Hayden Christensen, because they were very, very clear in that it was the person who played the masked Vader. So there you go. Read that as you will. Anyway, respectively, while Moses Ingram, Rupert Friend, and Sun Kang will play the infamous Jedi Hunters. The Mandalorian Season 3 does not yet have a premiere date. Obi-Wan Kenobi debuts on May the 25th. Be with you! And that's it. Right. So there we go. So probably back end of year. It'll be Christmas, won't it? It'll be Christmas when we'll see it. Season 3. Right, sticking with Star Wars. Star Wars Game of Thrones co-creator addresses a possible return to franchise. Except he don't, because I had a quick glance. Game of Thrones co-creators David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, whatever, were briefly connected, here we go, to the galaxy far, far away. As it was announced in early 2018 that the pair would develop a series of Star Wars films, only for the pair to exit that deal in late 2019. With the duo having expressed their interest in developing their own worlds and mythologies, it left fans to wonder if they could ever return to develop a Star Wars project. With Weiss recently noting that his creative efforts are too focused on his current projects to ponder a Star Wars return. Metal Lords, which was written and produced by, is it Weiss or Weiss? I don't bloody know, will premiere on Netflix on April 8th. Right at the moment, I'm so excited about Metal Lords coming out, and there's also the 3-body problem that we're working on, and between those two things that account for about 150% of my attention span, Weiss confirmed to comicbook.com. When asked if his mental focuses could change in the coming years, Weiss joked, "I manage expectations on my mental capacity." I'm trying out. When Weiss and Benioff's partnership with Lucasfilm was announced, it was unknown what films they would develop, leaving fans to merely speculate about such projects. Yeah, 'cause a lot of people thought it would be back in the past, like in the Old Republic, didn't they? Because obviously they'd done Game of Thrones, which were a fantasy, in the setting like the Middle Ages, but sort of Dark Ages sort of thing. So I thought, for some reason, everybody thought they'd do an ancient Star Wars story. What am I doing my arm over there for? I don't know. Anyway, with their split from the franchise coming months after the series finale of Game of Thrones, because it was crap, it's also unknown how much the pair invested in those potential stories, based on how busy they had been with the HBO series. In this regard, it's entirely possible that their plans never extended further than a brainstorming phase. Well, they rushed Game of Thrones, didn't they, season 8, because they thought they were going to run off and do Star Wars. So they thought, right, we'll rush this. There were all these promises, for season 8 of Game of Thrones, and I'm changing subjects slightly, but there were all these promises that each episode from season 8, because it wouldn't be a shorter season, wasn't it? But each episode would be 90 minutes, like a short film. And it never turned out that way, did it? Because they're liars. Anyway, as far as... I've read this bit. I'll carry on. As far as why the split occurred, it was reportedly a result of the pair signing a deal with Netflix to develop both movies and TV series, with their schedules seemingly being too packed to commit to developing multiple projects for multiple studios. Yeah, they got dumped on. Because Game of Thrones Season 8 was so bad, Lucasfilm told them to sling the hook. That's what they did. In Metal Lords, two kids want to start a heavy metal band in a high school where exactly two kids care about heavy metal. Hunter, Adrian Greensmith, is a die-hard metal fan. Is there any other kind who knows his history and can shred? Like that. His dream in life is to win at the upcoming Battle of the Bands. Sounds like 80s, doesn't it? He enlists his best friend Kevin Jaden Martell to man the drums, but with schoolmates more interested in Bieber than Black Sabbath. Kids these days, there's no idea. The motley crew must contend. Black Sabbath. Finding a bassist is a struggle until Kevin overhears Emily, Isis Hainsworth, slaying on her cello. The Motley Crue must be like, Tina Gow. She slays on her cello, doesn't she? Oh, I like Tina Gow. Watch the video where she does the Wonder Woman theme. It's amazing. It is. Look for it. The Motley Crue must contend with school, parents, hormones and teen angst while trying to get along enough for school effort to win the battle of the bands. Stay tuned for updates, blah, 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 blah. Would you like to see? Yeah. So he didn't really mention Star Wars at all, did he? He didn't mention it at all. They mentioned it, but he didn't. So that were a nothing burger of a story, wasn't it? Well, I mentioned nobody had died, and they actually have. I'm sorry, I forgot about this. I do apologise. Marvin J. Chomsky, Star Trek and Roots director, dies at 92. A 4-time Emmy winner, also helmed the features Evel Knievel and Tank, the telefilm Death of a Salesman, and miniseries Billionaire Boys Club. There he is. Marvin Chomsky directed Tank in 1984. Marvin J. Chomsky, a 4-time Emmy-winning director with credits including Roots, Star Trek and Hawaii Five-0, has died. He was 92. So it's a decent age. I hope I live to be 92. Chomsky died Monday evening of natural causes in a hospice facility in Santa Monica. His son, producer Peter Chomsky, told The Hollywood Reporter. Is he related to Noam Chomsky? I've no idea. Chomsky called the shots for such features as Evel Knievel 1971, starring George Hamilton, and Tank 1984, starring James Garner, and helmed the Straight from the Headlines miniseries Billionaire Boys Club in 1987. He won his Emmys for his work on the 1978 miniseries Holocaust, the 1980 telefilm Attica, the 1982 telefilm the 1980 telefilm Attica, 1982 telefilm Inside the Third Reich, and the 1986 miniseries Peter the Great. He collected 5 other nominations during his career. Born in New York City in 1929, Chomsky started out as a set decorator and art director. He began his directing career in 1964 with the medical drama The Doctors and the Nurses, then followed with episodes of other series including The Wild Wild West, Gunsmoke, Mission Impossible, Mannix and Police Story. Chomsky directed 3 episodes of NBC's original Star Trek, And the Children Shall Lead, and The Day of the Dove in 1968, and All Our Yesterdays in 1969. And in 1977 helmed 2 episodes of the groundbreaking ABC miniseries Roots. He also directed numerous TV movies, including Assault on the Wane, Fireball Forward, Invitation to a March with Blythe Danner, I'll Be Home for Christmas, Telling Secrets with Sybil Shepherd, and Dr. Franken. His last credit came for directing and producing the 1995 telefilm Catherine the Great, starring Catherine Zeta-Jones. Chomsky also served as a producer on a number of projects, including a 1966 TV adaptation of Death of a Salesman, starring Lee J. Cobb, and the 1966 sci-fi film The Bubble, starring Michael Cole. Never heard of it. Survivors include 3 survivors. Oh dear. It just says something like, he leaves behind his 3 sons, Peter and his wife Janelle, Eric and David, and his granddaughter Liliana. There you go, very sad. Marvin Chomsky, Star Trek director. I hope I live to be 92. But which ones did he do again? And The Children Shall Lead. Not a great episode, is it really? But Day of the Dove's quite good, and All Our Yesterdays is quite good as well. The Day of the Dove is the one where that non-corporeal entity tries to get the Enterprise, the humans and the Klingons, and the Kirk and is it Kang? I think it's Kang, isn't it? To fight each other, but they come together, don't they? And end up laughing at the creature, and it goes away. So that's a good one. And I think All Our Yesterdays is that the one where they go to is it Sarpedon? Where they find that library, don't they, with Mr. Atos. And the go Spock and something goes back in time, and Kirk and Bones go somewhere else, don't they? And it's because the sun's about to go nova or something, and so the population of the planet went back in time, didn't they, to save themselves to a time, long before the sun would destroy their planet. But yeah, it's a good one. If that's the one I'm thinking of. I do get mixed up. I'm an old fogey. I do get mixed up. Anyway, so he did them, and obviously Roots were amazing, wasn't it? For the time, I haven't seen it since they were first on, and I was young, but even as a young kid, I found it fascinating. Right, what's this one? Right, watch new Star Trek Strange New Worlds trailers featuring Uhura and La'an, Noonien Singh. Why? I don't understand. Anyway, earlier this month, and there's pictures of them, Uhura and La'an. She's not Uhura, sorry. I'm sure she's a lovely woman, and she's probably a fine actress, but she's not Uhura. As much, in as much as Zoe Saldana's not Uhura, is she? She's not. She's not. Nichelle Nichols is Uhura, and that's it. That's all there is. There's no other Uhuras. Nobody else can do Uhura like Nichelle Nichols. Anyway, earlier this month we got the chance to catch up with Captain Christopher Pike in a trailer for the upcoming Star Trek Strange New Worlds. When he gets back to the Enterprise, two of his crew members are going to be Cadet Nyota Uhura and Lieutenant La'an Noonien Singh. Now, the cadet and linguist, portrayed by Celia R. Gooding, and the Chief of Security, portrayed by Christina Chong, have their own introductory teasers, which dropped yesterday on Twitter from Star Trek on Paramount+. In the first of what appears to be a series of teasers focused on crew members of Pike's Enterprise, the captain welcomes Uhura aboard. She soon impresses him with the fact that she speaks 37 languages, which apparently do not include the one spoken by the alien she and her fellow landing party find themselves facing down with the glitchy universal translator. Amidst the space battles and aliens, though, Spock is already recognising her abilities, while she sees an indeterminate future for herself. Oh, cracky. As we see her glancing towards the Enterprise's communication station as the teaser fades out. Sorry, I just got a bit of a snuffle there. It actually started snowing today. We've had some lovely weather with temperatures, pushing 20 degrees Celsius, 20 Celsius. And then today it starts snowing. Unbelievable. As my mum had said, she blames NASA putting holes in the sky. Right, we're going to watch this and see what happens. I hope I don't get a copyright strike, but I'm still going to play it. Sod it.
Welcome aboard, everyone.
Cadet Uhura, very happy to have you aboard.
Glad to be here.
Cadets, that'd be pretty impressive to make the cut. I hear you speak 12 languages.
37.
Wow. What's he saying?
The universal translator isn't processing it. Uhura, do something.
That's not how linguistics works.
Starfleet would be fortunate to have an officer like you.
Yeah, well, whatever. Looks alright, I suppose. Yeah, that's it. That's it. She's not Uhura. Yeah, she's Uhura by name only. Uhura by name only. That's I'm sure she's a fine actress and, she to play a part well, but she's not Uhura. Uhura's Nichelle Nichols, graceful and beautiful. I mean, this other one might be graceful and beautiful, but she's not Nichelle Nichols. The tweet for Noonien Singh says she isn't just Chief of Security, she's a survivor. In fact, she says in the teaser, when I was a kid, I was the only one to survive. And in a rapid-fire succession of scenes, she's piloting a shuttlecraft through an apparent asteroid field, fighting, being scanned, and mind-melding with Spock. As we count down to the series premiere, check out the teasers for Cadet Nyota Uhura and Lieutenant La'an Noonien Singh. They and their shipmates board on May the 5th. Be with you. I know it's Star Trek. I don't give up. Star Trek Strange New Worlds launches on Paramount Plus, and here's the one for La'an.
Lieutenant La'an Noonien Singh, Chief of Security.
Welcome back and welcome aboard, everyone.
I don't understand.
When I was a kid, I was the only one to survive. I know it.
So why was she the only one to survive? The only one to survive what? Is she an augment? I thought there'd been medieval, augments. I mean, we saw what happened in Star Trek Enterprise when some augments, went rogue and killed Klingons left, right, and centre and stole a Klingon bird of prey, didn't they? So I thought there'd they crack down on them. If she is an augment, but if she's related to him, she's his great-great-great-granddaughter or something, I don't know, of Khan Noonien Singh. She got some of that augment DNA in her, which might surface from time to time. Anyway, that shuttle looks kind of snazzy, but it's not a bloody original series shuttle, is it? It's a 25% different shuttle. It looks a little bit like an original series shuttle, but it's not. But at least it's not a Discovery shuttle. So, and they got everywhere, didn't they? They even got into 24th century in Picard, the Discovery shuttles. I'll carry on a little bit.
It feels like to be alone.
What's he mind melding with her for?
Well, I can't just keep running. That's just who I am.
No, I don't know. That's it. She's very nice and lovely and stuff. Oh, that's it, isn't it? But I don't understand why that character's there as a Noonien Singh. I don't get it. I'm sure they'll explain it, but I still reckon it'll not make sense. It'll break canon, because that's all they know how to do. Right, we're sticking with Star Trek. Actually, we're sticking with Star Trek until the end, so I'm there. Right, Wrath of Khan fan theory. Sulu could have changed everything in Star Trek 2. He could, probably. And there's Sulu and Chekhov. There we go. Oh my. The events which took place in Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, are the stuff of legend. The way that Captain James T. Kirk, it was Admiral James T. Kirk, William Shatner duelled with Khan Noonien Singh, Ricardo Montalban, is considered by many to be the best action ever produced in the franchise. Yeah, well, if you knew what about it, you'd have changed that to Admiral. That word there should be Admiral. Admiral. As Khan says. Spock's role was also significant, as he served as a member of the crew and as a teacher to the trainees aboard the Enterprise when the emergency happened. Thanks to Mr. Spock, Leonard Nimoy, and Dr. McCoy's counsel. So you're not even mentioning DeForest Kelly, are you? No. Don't forget, DeForest Kelly, Dr. McCoy's counsel. Kirk was able to eventually defeat Khan at significant cost. Yeah. Yes, he lost. Spoilers, Spock dies. For a bit. The roles of the supporting characters were important too. Savick, Kirstie Alley, appeared to be taking the mantle as the next generation of Starfleet's leaders. At the same time, Uhura, Nichelle Nichols and Scotty James Doohan remained at their posts to support the crew and ship during the battles. Right. All served admirably, but some fans have mentioned that things might have turned out differently if two characters had been swapped. Sulu, George Takei, and Chekhov, Walter Koenig. Them two. According to a Reddit opinion posed by a Trek fan, if Sulu had been transferred to the USS Reliant instead of Chekhov, the story would have played out quite differently. On Reliant, Sulu would certainly have made first officer, more so than Chekhov, his junior, wrote the fan. Even by the events of Star Trek 4, Chekhov didn't quite have enough gravitas to get a posting like first officer on a ship of the line, like Reliant. Star Trek would have been better if Sulu had taken Chekhov's place on Reliant, the fan wrote. It really ought to have been Sulu who was transferred out, giving him a better shot for advancement to the command chair, if not the Enterprise, than another ship of the line. Plus Khan would have recognised him, wouldn't he? We wouldn't have had all this, bother. Chekhov wasn't on the Enterprise at that time when they did Space Seed. Pardon me, in season 1. Anyway, the opinions about Sulu and Chekhov held by this Reddit user are shared by the voices who create the Inglorious Trexperts podcast. In a recent episode of their show, Trexpert Ashley Edward Miller asked if Chekhov was a character who needed to be with the rest of Kirk's crew. I mean, do we need Chekhov? Miller pondered during an episode examining Star Trek 3. I'll put it to you this way, Miller said. If you're going to leave somebody behind, isn't it cooler to bring Uhura and leave Chekhov? The Trexperts have gone into detail a few times regarding Chekhov's value to the Enterprise, including when he could not fire photon torpedoes during the famous wormhole scene in Star Trek The Motion Picture. I don't understand that. What do you mean? When he could not fire photon torpedoes? He did fire photon torpedoes. Kirk ordered him to fire phasers, and then that order were countermanded by Decker, and he said, no, photon torpedo. And he went, torpedo armed, because time was stretching and stuff. And so he did fire photon torpedoes. I don't understand what they're talking about there. Anyway, one scene which was deleted from the final edit of Wrath of Khan would have made Sulu's presence aboard the Enterprise feel a bit silly. Originally, Sulu was supposed to have been promoted to the rank of captain, and his new ship was the USS Excelsior. Had they left the scene in the film, pardon me, that would have meant that there would have been 4 captains aboard the Enterprise: Kirk, Spock, Sulu, and Scotty. Yeah, I think there's a book. It's a sequel actually to All Our Yesterdays, and I forgot what it's called. Is it Time for Yesterday? And I think it's set between the Star Trek The Motion Picture and Star Trek The Wrath of Khan. I think it's set closer to The Wrath of Khan, because I think like 15 years is supposed to have passed, hasn't it, between The Motion Picture and Wrath of Khan, or something like that. And I think it's set a bit more closer to the time of Wrath of Khan. And I think in that they say Sulu's been promoted to captain, and I can't remember if they said which ship he'd been assigned to. I can't remember. It's a long time since I've read it. But even in that, you see, he'd been made captain. Anyway, had Sulu been promoted to captain as planned, the stealing the Enterprise scene would have been much different. Instead of Captain Styles, James B. Sicking, chasing Kirk out of space dock, it would have been his old ally Sulu. It'd have been good, would that? It would have been good. And then, there could have been a bit of friction there between Sulu and Kirk. But then, by the time we get to Star Trek 6, it drops everything to save his old captain, doesn't it? So that been reunited, joyously. But then, he wouldn't have been in Star Trek 4 and 5, then, would he? Anyway, and who would have flown the helicopters in Star Trek 4? Don't know. Mr. Scott, as noted in Star Trek 3, was promoted to Captain of Engineering aboard the Excelsior. Eventually, as most fans know, Sulu did get his chance at the centre seat on Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. Sulu played a major role in that film and would return as Captain of the Excelsior on the Voyager episode Flashback. There is Ricardo Montalban. In the original encounter with the villain, neither Sulu nor Chekhov faced Khan. Oh, wasn't Sulu in that episode? I can't remember. But we know we're there because we're in season 1, wasn't it? In the classic original series episode Space Seed, Takei did not appear, and Koenig had not yet joined the cast. For years, fans have pointed out that Chekhov did not encounter Khan in Space Seed, and it assumed that Chekhov was aboard the Enterprise somewhere, and Khan met him. This scene was just not included in the main story. It is safe to say that Sulu might have met Khan during Space Seed as well. Well, I'm sure he did. Yeah, whatever. But yeah, it'd be nice to have Sulu being the captain of the Excelsior. Seeing it through its trial runs and stuff, and then becoming the captain. When it went out on its missions. So what happened to Captain Styles then? Why wasn't he captain of the Excelsior? Was he just captain during its testing? Dunno. Anyway, that's an interesting little story. And last one, we've got a list. 10 times Gene Roddenberry hated Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry was very proud of the universe he created, but also very protective. Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, was very passionate about the franchise throughout his life. He constantly advocated for the Trek to portray an earnestly optimistic future for humanity, one that mirrored his own hopes for a better tomorrow. See, I'm trying to talk posh, and it all goes wrong. I get my H's wrong. While most of the time the writers and other creative people working on Trek tried their best to follow Gene's utopian vision, there were times where it was simply too restrictive to the story. Gene wanted to have no main characters fighting with each other, no storylines that involve technology being used as a villain. We've had a few of them. No recurring aliens or themes, and plenty of other things that, if followed, would have ruined Star Trek. Of course, Gene's optimism is still respected by the creators of Trek today. No, it's not respected at all. Sorry, what culture? You don't know what you're talking about. But in a way that's much more realistic than Gene originally intended. See, these will be people that like Discovery and Picard. Oh, well, they're allowed to, I suppose. Can't all be jaded like me. But I do like Moon Knight. Some fans criticise modern Trek for not following Gene's guidelines as precisely as the original series or the Next Generation. But it should be said that some of the greatest moments in Trek history were strongly opposed by Mr. Roddenberry. This list will be looking at 10 times that Gene Roddenberry hated his most beloved creation. Number 10, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. It may come as a surprise to Trek fans that one of the most beloved movies in the franchise, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, was actually disliked by Roddenberry for many reasons. Yeah, because he was sidelined, wasn't he? Although the motion picture made money, it was received poorly by critics and general audiences, most people finding it a bit boring and pretentious, some even going as far to dub it the motionless picture. I've got to admit, when I saw it as a kid, when I was 12 years old, took my nephew to see it, who were, I think it's about 4 years younger than me, something like that. And all he did, I say I was only 12, all he did was talk to the kid behind him in the seat and say, "My Uncle Steve," that's my name, "my Uncle Steve can beat up your dad." I was only 12, so spending half at film telling him to sit down and be quiet. But it was boring to me. Like I said, it was I was a Star Wars kid. So I like Star Trek. I watched it on telly and stuff, but I was expecting, a bit like Star Wars, a bit more action-packed, and it wasn't. But I love it now. I love Star Trek the motion picture now. It's great, brilliant. Anyway, it became clear to the studio that in order to reinvigorate Star Trek, they would need to go in a radically different direction for the next film. They took a lot of Gene's creative control away, instead letting Harve Bennett take the lead for the new script. Roddenberry was of course upset with having his control taken away, though his biggest issue with the film was the supposed militarisation of Starfleet. It's all kind of military, isn't it? He hated the violence in the film and thought that the Genesis device was a ridiculous idea, whether or not he was right today. The Wrath of Khan is regarded as one of Trek's best stories. The introduction of a strong villain, a classic from the original series no less, showed that Trek can be exciting and fun while still smart. Yeah, it is. It's amazing. It Star Trek 2 and Star Trek the motion picture is as well. It's like comparing Star Trek 2 and comparing Star Trek the motion picture. It's like comparing Alien and Aliens. They're like different animals, aren't they? Both great in their own way. Right, number 9, Family. Oh, what did he hate this for? The Next Generation episode Family directly follows The Best of Both Worlds, the iconic 2-part episode where Captain Picard got assimilated by the Borg and turned into Locutus, destroying countless Starfleet ships. 39. At the Battle of Wolf 359 before having his humanity restored at the end of the episode. In Family, Picard returns to Earth with the Enterprise to visit his family and recover from the trauma of being assimilated. And there's the Enterprise in space. Well, it's not space dock, is it? But it's an orbital facility. It's given a name in it, but I can't remember what it is. Anyway. No. Gene Roddenberry was strongly against this episode, wanting instead to keep the story self-contained in each episode. Apparently Gene would have rather had Picard go right back to boldly going, mere days after having the very essence of his individuality taken from him, and being forced to kill thousands, about 11,000 actually. However, his main criticism of the script was the way that Picard's upbringing was portrayed and the hostility between him and his brother. He argued that siblings would simply not argue and fight like that in the 24th century. I think you're wrong there, Gene. Family would eventually be recognised as one of the most emotional storylines for Picard, giving his character more depth. It also helps audiences recover after the best of both worlds and makes it a little more believable for Picard to return to work in the next episode. Number 8, the original series crossovers on the Next Generation, and there's this encounter at Farpoint, and that's Admiral McCoy, who did an inspection of the medical facilities on the Enterprise D. Strangely, Gene Roddenberry didn't want any classic characters from the original series to return in the Next Generation. His reason for this, as stated in the official Star Trek series Bible he wrote, is that he wanted the newest Star Trek show to stand apart from the original as something new and different. This was a noble goal. Roddenberry was committed to not letting the franchise go stale, constantly evolving it to be grander and more modern. This is something that shows like Discovery, Lower Decks and Picard are continuing to this day. However, every now and then a cameo from another series in the franchise can be fun to see. It helps the universe feel truly connected and real. See how I just read them names and I didn't like, gag or do anything. I just thought I'd just read through them and not comment. Roddenberry was originally very adamant against crossovers, but caved in and allowed DeForest Kelley to make an appearance as Dr. McCoy, Admiral McCoy, in the Next Generation pilot to tour the new Enterprise D. Eventually, sorry, there's noise behind it. I know there's nobody in, but Ian is upstairs and Princess is out. Eventually, Star Trek became more comfortable with crossovers, and during Deep Space Nine, Voyager and other following shows became a deeply connected universe, much like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yeah, it's nice to see all characters pop up. Like I say, one of my favourite episodes is Relics, where we have Scotty in the Next Generation episode, Relics. Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, and there's the Enterprise blowing up. Never understood why the saucer section all blew up like that. You think the warp core's in there, isn't it? In the secondary hull down there. You think that'd be the bit that blew up, wouldn't you? But no, they blew up the saucer section. More dramatic in it. Nowadays, there have been so many ships called Enterprise in Star Trek that it's hard to keep track. This wasn't always going to be the case, and yeah, it was shocking. And oh God, they blew up the Enterprise. But this wasn't always going to be the case. Gene Roddenberry had a strong emotional connection to the original Enterprise and was heartbroken when it was destroyed in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Harve Bennett, another main creative head of Star Trek at the time, knew audiences would appreciate the shock ending of having the Enterprise self-destruct to save the day. Roddenberry, however, believed that the destruction of the Enterprise was symbolic of Bennett trying to take creative control over Star Trek and change it to fit his own vision. Roddenberry eventually caved in when it was decided that a new Enterprise, the Enterprise A, would be constructed to replace the original. I mean, caved in. It didn't have anything to do with it. By this time, Roddenberry was just, in the movies, just a creative consultant. He didn't have any power. Previously, the plan was to do away with the name Enterprise forever and have the Excelsior be the main hero ship of the franchise. Number 6, the removal of Number 1. The pilot episode of Star Trek, the original series, The Cage, the original pilot, featured an entirely different cast apart from Spock. Among them, playing the first officer, Number 1, was Majel Barrett Roddenberry. I don't think she was. Yeah, she wasn't Roddenberry then. The partner and future wife of Gene Roddenberry. Gene Roddenberry wanted to give Barrett a lead role in Star Trek, but when the studio watched The Cage, although they were intrigued by the premise of the show, they hated the cast, particularly two of the lead characters, Spock and Number 1. Gene eventually convinced them to keep Spock, but all the other characters had to be replaced. Barrett lost the role of First Officer, but appeared in future episodes of the original series, wearing a blonde wig, playing Nurse Chapel in a number of episodes. Eventually, during the Next Generation, Barrett went on to voice a number of computers on the show, as well as the fan-favourite character Luoxana Troy. Also, Star Trek Strange New Worlds is set to premiere soon. The show is based around the adventures of the original crew from The Cage, including Number One, now portrayed by Rebecca Romaine. So although Jean was annoyed by Barrett's exclusion, she eventually got to solidify her place in Trek in other ways, and her character Number One is finally getting the spotlight. Number 5, we're halfway. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. I liked Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Yeah, it's got its problems, but that scene, the campfire scene, is one of my favourites in all of Star Trek. Singing row, row, row your boat. It's great. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier is regarded by many fans as the worst movie in the franchise. But one of its most vocal haters was Gene Roddenberry himself. Gene even prepared to take legal action against William Shatner, the director of the film, for abusing his creation and slapping the name Gene Roddenberry on it. The case never materialised, but it did cause a lot of drama behind the scenes. Shatner and Roddenberry didn't talk much, if at all, during the production of the movie, but when Roddenberry learned about the plot, he became irritated, believing that Shatner was ripping off an old movie he was working on, but never finished, called The God Thing. The script had somewhat similar religious themes as The Final Frontier, and Roddenberry was under the impression that Shatner was stealing the story that he desperately wanted to tell. Wasn't The God Thing going to be the original story for the motion picture? I know, but it was In Thy Image, wasn't it? And I don't know, I can't remember. But it did, I don't know. But as I said, he didn't have any power at this time, did Roddenberry. This is why he got the Next Generation going, didn't he, on TV, because he didn't have any power in the movies. And he eventually didn't have any power in the Next Generation. And there you go. Right, Redemption. The Next Generation Season 4 finale, Redemption, was the 100th episode made for the series, and as such, Roddenberry wanted it to be big. Redemption continued the Klingon political arc that began earlier in the series. In the episode, we saw a civil war beginning to brew in the Klingon Empire. The conflict was resolved by the end of the episode. It was 2-part, wasn't it? But Roddenberry was still upset that the 100th episode of The Next Generation featured a war plot, something he considered too bleak for the show. Ronald D. Moore was responsible... It's Klingons, isn't it? Ronald D. Moore was responsible for pushing Redemption into production, despite Gene's wishes, and most fans are glad he did. Moore was responsible for creating most of the updated Klingon... Klingon aesthetic, and had a real talent for creating believable alien cultures. Redemption is just one example of Moore taking the Klingons and fleshing them out to be more believable. Beyond his typical hatred for violence, Roddenberry also didn't believe that Worf was a strong enough character to carry the 100th episode. Fortunately, Redemption and a few more episodes, especially in Deep Space Nine, eventually turned Worf into a better lead character. Yeah, it was very good. He just likes throwing... Basically, he just liked to throw his weight about, didn't he? And be, pissy, basically. It was his baby, and it was taken away from him. And Next Generation was taken away from him, pretty much. And he got, he got salty, and he's every right to, I suppose, but, it happens. Episodes where technology is the enemy, the Borg. While Outlook, they had loads of it in the original series. Ultimate Computer, for instance, and episode with Nomad, the Changeling. Well, maybe he didn't like those episodes either. While outlining the rules for Star Trek The Next Generation in his official series Bible, Gene Roddenberry was very clear that he wanted the writers to avoid portraying technology in a negative way. Roddenberry was very aware that many people love Star Trek because it takes place in an optimistic future, one where technology is humanity's salvation rather than the cause of its demise, as is the case in most other science fiction. Replicators, transporters and warp drive turned Earth into a paradise where all people are free to explore the universe and pursue their passions. However, this advice has been blatantly ignored of The Next Generation many times. The Borg, for example, are a technological nightmare. Yeah, but it's not human technology, is it? It's alien. That's alien technology. are a technological nightmare that serves as a warning for anyone looking to integrate computers with people's minds, such as the binars. Or what about the constant transporter and hologram malfunctions? Yeah, well, they're malfunctions, aren't they? All technology has a good and a bad side. Gene Roddenberry was an optimist and couldn't imagine why someone would use a replicator to create a gun rather than a cheeseburger. But eventually the writers abandoned this guideline altogether, not in fear of new technology, but in acceptance of its destructive possibilities. Well, yeah, you don't want to just get rid of a wealth of story ideas just because, he likes technology and he don't want it to be used against us. I mean, technology in itself isn't either good or bad, it's how it's used, isn't it? Right, the disappearance of Wesley Crusher. Oh, well, glad to see it back of him, little sod. Wesley Crusher was one of Gene Roddenberry's favourite characters in Star Trek. Yeah, because he gave him one of his names, didn't it? It was his Gene Wesley Roddenberry or something. Mostly because the character was actually based on an idealised version of himself as a teenager. The audience's reactions to Wesley deeply upset Gene. Because we're annoying. At times, due to Wesley being based off of himself, he even saw their hate for the character as an attack on him. The truth is that most people disliked Wesley simply because he was too perfect. Yeah, but a bit of a... I don't know... what's a male version of a Mary Jane? I don't know. A Mary John. During season 1 of The Next Generation, Wesley was the star of the show, constantly saving the ship and beating impossible odds and never making any mistakes. Oh, he did make mistakes. As the series progressed, Wesley appeared less and less before leaving the ship to attend Starfleet Academy, then ditched the Federation altogether in the episode Journey's End, to explore space and reality with the Traveller, his mysterious alien mentor. Oh, pardon me. He isn't seen after this point until the movie Star Trek Nemesis, where he's just sitting in the background during the wedding scene in a Starfleet uniform, though. Dress uniform. Gene Roddenberry was always annoyed that his self-inserted character was sidelined, especially because it wasn't the studio that rejected him, but the fans. Yeah, but... it was annoying, and it happened a lot in the 80s and early 90s. They had to have a kid, a teenager or a kid on the show, and they even did it in Galaxy Quest, didn't they? They took Mickey out of it, having the kid as the pilot of the Protector in the original series of Galaxy Quest, obviously. Because he'd grown up in the film. Anyway, right, the animated series. Why did he hate it? He created it. Star Trek, the animated series, was basically created to keep the love of Trek alive in the zeitgeist long enough for the movies to be made. Well, no. The show is actually quite good. It is very good. The storylines are very reminiscent of the original series, though sometimes even grander, as the animated format allowed the writers to tell any story they wanted, regardless of the budget constraints. Although, you could tell the voices were done by, all the voices of the other characters were done by the same as, the crew. Because you can tell the voices. And you always had either Nichelle Nichols or Majel Barrett, going at some point. as a psychic alien woman going. But anyway, Gene Roddenberry, however, disagreed. He famously hated the show because of a few minor story errors, but these errors were nothing worse than what was seen in the original series. The fact that the Next Generation ships are way slower than Kirk's Enterprise, for example. Well, no, that's just how the warp scale, they changed the warp scale, didn't they? Despite this, when Roddenberry's office reobtained the creative licenses for Star Trek at the end of the Next Generation's first season, he officially made the animated series non-canon. According to Gene, it never happened. Misery guts. Nowadays, matters are a little more complicated. We've seen references to the animated series in Deep Space Nine. Have we? Ooh, I have to think about that one. Lower Decks and other Trek installments, and it seems like it's making a return to canon once and for all. As David Gerald, a writer for the animated series, puts it, arguments about canon are silly. I always felt that Star Trek Animated was part of Star Trek because Gene Roddenberry accepted the paycheck for it and put his name on the credits. Yeah. Deep Space Nine mentioned the animated series. What did they mention in that? I don't know. I can't remember now. I'll have to do some research. And that's your lot anyway. So there we go. That's your lot. That's your news for today. So I'll close that window. Ba-dump. Make myself big. And I might get got by a ghost. You never know. So, what day are we on? Wednesday. There's no news tomorrow because I'm busy. I am entertaining guests. Well, I get my mates coming up, basically. My mates coming up, we're going to have a relaxing evening, watching telly and eating grub and, having a laugh. So I'll be back on Friday with my Picard review. And you never know, I might do one of these, a news show, and I might not. Depends what mood I'm in. It depends what mood I'm in. Right, so until then, wherever you are in the world or in space, be nice to each other, help each other out when you can, and until Friday, I'll say they.